Michael Wilson now joins us from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Right then, so let's start with Asia Pacific as we normally do. And as far as that's concerned, basically, still worries about COVID measures in China. Although it has to be said that they are being slightly revised, and so that's giving investors some kind of hope. But as it stands at the moment, Hong Kong didn't really react to it, down about 1%, Shanghai Composite down a little, and also the Nikkei down a little as well. If you really want to know what's getting granular about the Chinese economy, then have a look at the world's largest government contract electronics maker, Foxconn. Now, as you know, it had its problems in iPhone City, which is Zhengzhou in China. Apparently, the share price, and that's has been slumping because of output being crimped because of COVID regulations. As far as the US is concerned, stock futures up a little this morning, a fairly negative start to the week. Nasdaq down about 2%, the Dow down 1.15, and all that's basically about is the better service industry than expected. Service industry results much better than expected. Also add in the decent, more people actually in work from the jobless figures on Friday, and you have what the stock market, what equities are saying is the picture of a relatively strong economy, and that's not something which necessarily means that interest rates are going to stop rising fairly quickly to damp down on inflation. So inflation worries hitting the market. Apple is exploring manufacturing its iPads outside China because of all the problems I've just been talking about as far as China's concerned right now, and it could be moving some of its iPad production to India. It already makes older model iPhones in India right as we speak. Sam Bankman-Fried, let's keep going with FTX, slightly revised, and so that's giving investors some kind of hope. But as it stands at the moment, Hong Kong didn't really react to it, down about 1%, Shanghai Composite down a little, and also the Nikkei down a little as well. If you really want to know what's getting granular about the Chinese economy, then have a look at the world's largest government contract electronics maker, Foxconn. Now, as you know, it had its problems in iPhone City, which is Zhengzhou in China. Apparently, the share price, and that's has been slumping because of output being crimped because of COVID regulations. As far as the US is concerned, stock futures up a little this morning, a fairly negative start to the week. Nasdaq down about 2%, the Dow down 1.15, and all that's basically about is the better service industry than expected. Service industry results much better than expected. Also add in the decent, more people actually in work from the jobless figures on Friday, and you have what the stock market, what equities are saying is the picture of a relatively strong economy, and that's not something which necessarily means that interest rates are going to stop rising fairly quickly to damp down on inflation. So inflation worries hitting the market. Apple is exploring manufacturing its iPads outside China because of all the problems I've just been talking about as far as China's concerned right now, and it could be moving some of its iPad production to India. It already makes older model iPhones in India right as we speak. Sam Bankman-Fried, let's keep going with FTX. He could spend years in prison. He's got on chasing him the SEC and the DOJ, $32 billion meltdown. I'm sure I don't need to tell you about the size of it. The problem is it could take lawyers years and the courts years to actually get him into prison if that's what's decided. So, but that's the feeling at the moment, that he could well go, but I suspect it'll take a long time. And as we know, the only people who make money out of this basically are the lawyers who will continue to do that. As far as the UK is concerned, you can forget Black Friday. I was interviewing a man who used to run Sainsbury's, whom I know quite well, called Justin King, and he said, you know, to be honest, we don't care. I mean, we have to do Black Friday because because it's something that's imported from the United States, actually it doesn't mean a great deal. What we'd much rather see is the consumer actually shopping steadily, and that is not happening at the moment. In fact, retail sales are below the rates, the rise in retail sales below the rate of inflation in the UK. We didn't get to talk yesterday about this, but the CBI, which is the sort of bosses organisation in the UK, has been calling on the government to announce a sort of growth strategy that might help us through that they've had a very, very gloomy outlook for the UK, saying there's going to be a recession all through 2023. And just sort of back to cryptos, the UK wants to put itself forward as being a sort of micro hub. Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, this pictured, now he's talking to the CBI, there's Prime Minister, but when he was Chancellor, this was something that he'd often said that London should be, the UK should be a hub of crypto technology. He still wants to do that, but they're going to the Treasury is trying to work on ways of getting the cryptos regulated. I mean, good luck with that. It'll take a long, long time, but that is the ambition in any case. And then finally, let's talk about oil. I've been reading something this morning, just talking about the exact level of Russian oil production decline could be the difference between a global shortfall or a global glut of oil. So it's all that close. I mean, there's lots of different ways of looking at this right now. India and China are going to go ahead and buy Russian oil come what may. There is a $60 cap on the price of oil to try to erode what Russia earns from this. I don't think it'll work if they've got rogue nations. And already we've got a traffic jam of tankers, apparently, just reading this, in the Bosphorus this morning off Turkey, because Ankara, which is the Turkish financial capital, or Ankara is the capital, is not really convinced about whether or not the ships are insured. You remember one of the things that was trying to cut down on Russian oil exports was the lack of insurance, and insurance companies around the world were trying to compete with that. Ankara is now calling their bluff and saying, are these ships insured? They're in our waters, or what? What is going on? That's the global view this morning.
Right. Let's talk about the oil market, volatility, and the rest, and what is really happening. What long game is Russia trying to play in all of this? Because it looks as though there's a lull in the war as we speak, and I'm not sure Russia has that level of financial fillip any longer. So what game is it really trying to play in all of this? And how will that interpret in the grand scheme of things for the international oil market?
That is the question, isn't it? Really, I suppose. I don't know the answer to it. All I can guess, in the same way that you do, is that Russia is playing a long game. I mean, the best generals that Russia have are called January and February, i.e., deep winter, when it's very, very cold indeed. And I suspect that they're trying to take advantage of that. What this means for their oil revenues, I'm not quite sure, but they can count on countries like India and China taking a discounted oil from them, because that's what markets do. I mean, this is the problem about trying to buck a market. Will Russia get the kind of revenues it needs from discounted prices of oil? That's the big question. I don't know the answer to it, but all I can say is this volatility will continue. And OPEC clearly not helping by just going along with the cut in production that it's been proposing for months.
Well, I mean, certainly the G7 countries don't want Russia to get more revenues and profit from the war in Ukraine, so the price cap. But India and China are not part of it. They say they will continue to buy oil from Russia. So at the end of the day, it probably will not have any effect. But we'll see how that goes. Turkey is looking for insurance documents. Well, that's Turkey. But I wanted to ask you about this reaction from the European Union Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, the president, to the decision of the US to provide green subsidies, and how that is likely to lead to a trade war. And Ursula von der Leyen is saying, that the Eurozone must, look for, responses to the United States in that regard. Are we facing a trade war in that regard or not? That's one. The second one, very quickly, has to do with the the US, saying that ASML, the technological company in Netherlands, cannot produce ultraviolet, technology for China. So US says, look, we have a trade war with China, but can the US also stop other countries from relating with China? How does that fall within the framework of international trade, within the framework of international economic law? US dictating to everybody, taking unilateral decisions. And is the Netherlands so vulnerable that they cannot stand up to the US and say, we make our choices, as India is saying, for example, with regard to the G7 price cap?
I mean, well, you can go as far as you like with international law. I mean, it's a question of countries actually standing up and deciding what they're going to do. And clearly, there's a lot of resentment about the United States, as you quite rightly say, saying you will do this and you won't do that. And I think it's an absolute miracle that the EU decided a $60 barrel a cap, because a lot of countries within the EU, like Poland, for example, saying that's far too high, it should be much lower. And yet people, there are European countries that need oil as well. So I think that the absolute needs of the population, and it's what India's saying as well, of course, isn't it? India's saying, we don't care about international law, we don't care about the international situation, we don't care about the EU or the G7. Our priorities are our consumers, and they need oil, and we're going to buy it where we can. I mean, this is the problem about trying to, as I mentioned, trying to buck a market. It's really, really difficult, really difficult to do.
Hi, thanks. Just on the UK projection, the CBI, Confederation of British Industry boss Tony Danker, talking about the expectation of a 0.4% shrinkage in the UK economy. So expecting a one-year recession, and talking about one of the problems or issues that must be tackled is jobs. So in terms of productivity and jobs, people taking on the jobs in the UK. I just wanted to have a thought around that and the impact on immigration, especially, I keep bringing this up to you on Brexit, because we know that there have been changes in terms of immigration policies in the UK, particularly with this government, and it'd be interesting to see what they will do to respond to the CBI's projections for next year.
Well, the CBI are actually the CBI are basically saying that there will be a recession next year. I think we probably know that. What they're saying is, where is the plan for growth? Where is the plan? This terrible question that always gets asked about Western economies. Where is the productivity? Very few countries achieve productivity, i.e., more output without actually having to pay people or factories or prices or keep pace with inflation. Where do you get productivity actually from? In other words, squeezing the assets more, and it's very difficult to do. I think that I'm not that much worried about what the CBI thinks about a recession next year. I think their other question was, where are the growth policies? And you're absolutely right to focus on immigration. Nobody minds immigration. We are a country founded on immigration. But what we ask is, and I think it's absolutely right to do this, that you must be bringing some sorts of skills with you, rather than just coming here and then living off the state and not going to work. I think that if you've got workers who are skilled in areas that we actually need, then that immigration ought to be encouraged. And I'm sure it will be. It's a really difficult one to do, because you've got the European Court of Human Rights on the other side of things actually saying, well, you can't forbid anybody from migrating to the UK. Well, actually you can, because what you do is you say, well, we need to look after our own domestic situation, and I think that's what they're trying to do. That's what the CBI wants. But the CBI wants the government to attack the skills shortage, and I think that goes with every Western economy right now.
Well, obviously, the CBI wants people to come and work in Great Britain, but the government thinks differently. Thank you very much, Michael Wilson. Now, for business updates across the African continent, Rotu Sudiri is here.
Good morning. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. You sounded really angry this morning. You sounded really upset, and I want to talk to you three about Brazil and temporary economic escapism. Permit me. what we saw yesterday for 45 minutes against Korea, for 45 minutes, we forgot about the disastrous performance of the APC candidate in Chatham House. For 45 minutes, we forgot about inflation. We forgot about economic stagnation. We forgot about the war in Ukraine. What we saw for 45 minutes, now there's some barriers to entry. You had to have lights, and you also had to have a cable subscription, right? But what we saw from these magical men, it was poetry and joy. And I think Aaron will get into it later on, but I had to just bring it in here. For 45 minutes against Korea. Anyway, let's get to the bad news now across Africa. So trade, Nigeria's third quarter trade figures came in at 11.5 trillion naira. This is down about 9.7% versus the second quarter was about 12.5 trillion. But against the third quarter of 2021, I think we came in about 10.4 trillion naira. Now let's quickly go through. This is the foreign trade in goods statistics from the Bureau of Statistics. Let's quickly skip through some of these figures here, because you notice it's pretty much the same story, whereby exports of crude oil made up about 78% of the figures. So we should have the numbers here. This is the foreign trade in goods statistics from the Bureau of Statistics. And let's quickly look at the exports. If we look at the exports, you'll see that 78% of our trade, to the right there, crude oil, top right of your screen, 4.6 trillion, 78.5% of exports was crude oil. It's the same thing. Look at agriculture, 1.4%, raw materials, 1.4%. Look at solid minerals at the bottom left of the screen, less than 1%. It was really, really small, with all the minerals resources that we have. We look at imports, same story. Most of the imports, if you look at to the right of your screen, manufactured goods. Why does the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria continue to scream about foreign exchange shortage? Look at that. 50% of our imports are in manufactured goods. Other petroleum products, think about fuel, imports of fuel and what it means for foreign exchange. Those are the big drivers. Agricultural goods, 9.06%, raw materials. What else in these figures? So yeah, total trade, 11.5 trillion, exports 5.9 trillion, imports 5.6. Your trade balance, 269 billion. So a positive trade balance of 269 billion. But when we talk about Nigeria weaning herself off of the oil exports, when we talk about Nigeria diversifying our income, these numbers are exactly what we see, and it still tells the same story. So, we have to improve that. I mean, again, and we mentioned, of course, the Central Bank of Nigeria and the RT200 export scheme, where they are trying to improve those numbers that we just looked at on our screen. We go to South Africa, and there's been a turnaround in South Africa. Ramaphosa is now saying he's going for the second term as leader of ANC. The ANC is backing him, telling him that they said they're going to put that that independent report aside with the foreign exchange scandal in his farm. He's even hired lawyers to go to the Supreme Court to put the report aside. So a quick about face. He says he's no longer quitting. He's facing those charges head on. The CEO of Omani, Mr. Gobalsamy, let's go to fertilizers real quick. Omnia is one of the biggest fertilizer producers on the African continent. He is saying that water shortage is the biggest threat facing Africa. I said not the war in Ukraine, not COVID. Water shortage, if you think about, a climate change essentially is what he's saying that we should be worried about. Mr. Gobalsamy, again, is the Group Chief Executive Officer of Omnia, which is a fertilizer producer. Finally, speaking of water shortage, the biggest man-made dam in the world, the Kariba Dam, facing a shortage of hydropower as far as water is concerned. Zimbabweans now are facing 19-hour power cuts as a result of that. So this climate matter is very, very real.
I mean, it's a good thing you said those things, that the Brazil match took us away from all the things that happened. But we can't look away.
True. It was only 45 minutes.
From the economy.
Yeah.
And we can't look away from the things that are happening. The fact that we still have fuel scarcity till dates.
Right outside.
And it's gone on for over 2 weeks and we've not had solutions to the matter.
Well, NNPC says that they're facing it, that it should go away before Christmas.
And anyway, but they said before that we're not supposed to have fuel scarcity in December when we had the last fuel scarcity.
Yeah, true.
And also, and that's why I say it is incumbent for candidates to quit all the cheap blackmail and politicking this season and face the questions head on and answer them.
And not call on surrogates to
and
answer
not
the
call on
question.
surrogates. You see, because why it hurts is that Nigeria is in a dire situation.
Very, very dire.
Till date, and on TV, I would like to challenge the MBS to release unemployment numbers, current unemployment numbers. the National Bureau of Statistics. I'd like to challenge them to release it. Because something is definitely up. That's why they've not been able to release it.
Yep, they'll tell you it's funding. They'll say it's funding.
They should look for the funding. They should put those numbers out.
They just put out the trade statistics figure. So why
Also,
they, you know,
look at the fact that the number of jobs, what is it called?
underemployment?
The number of jobs promised.
Yes.
3 million jobs a year.
Oh, yeah, that was back in 2015.
2015.
Yes.
We've even, a lot of people have lost more jobs.
Yeah, you've lost jobs.
And that's why it's incumbent for the country to speak. I keep repeating, a lot of people don't get me. Personally, I'll speak for myself. I've got nothing against any candidate. All I've just got something for is for a better country. But we cannot get a better country without interrogation of ideas. That's why when our candidates go to speak on international platforms, they should not make us look somehow.
No,
and that's why they must
say
account.
a few things.
Yes, go ahead,
And they
Doctor.
are as follows.
Yes.
Number one, you mentioned Ramaphosa. I said the other time that the big thing that this can do is damage to his reputation. Because he ran on a ticket of a man who will come and fight corruption.
With reforms.
And his administration also went after Jacob Zuma. And now, you know, a week ago we were saying, oh, his political future is hanging in the balance.
Yep.
But he has had the support of his lawyers, who are asking for a review of the report by that panel on Farmgate, or the Falafala farm, as it is otherwise called. Now you have his party, the ANC, supporting him ahead of a parliamentary vote. Now, the ANC now supporting him, what it means is that in the South African parliament, they have 400 seats. The ANC alone has 230 seats in that parliament. For you to be able to impeach the president, you will need 2/3
of those seats.
Of the votes, 2/3 majority. They are not likely to get that 2/3 majority. But you have people like Julius Malema of the Democratic Alliance saying, oh, this is something we will do and fight against it. What does President Ramaphosa want? He wants a second term as head of the ANC, you know, and is likely to get it. So at the end of the day, there's a political angle to it. I talked about the political issue. I also talked about the reputation issue. But this is South Africa. We'll see how it plays out. That's number one. Number two, as for the water issue, the gentleman, the Omicron man that you said was talking about water. Yeah, of course, water is a big issue in the world. We have had water conflicts. Under the international law of the sea, the various stakeholders talk about seabed mining, they talk about economic zone, they talk about the common heritage of mankind. But the big issue that the gentleman has put his finger on is about climate change. It's about global warming. The Paris Agreement of, is it 2015 or 205? 2015, you know, said the entire world must commit to bringing the level of global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. That was the issue in COP26. That was the issue at COP27, Sheikh Al-Chama, where it was resolved that it doesn't look like, you know, the world is really going in that direction. But the problem is that when you have a crisis with water, you have flood, you have drought, you have famine, you have devastation. And the world is facing, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, is facing very serious challenge in that regard. As for football, maybe when Iran comes, we'll talk about it. But escapism, escape from reality.
Escape from reality,
okay, yes, they were dancing samba. They were dancing samba yesterday, but they have Lula. That's the difference.
That's true.
Who says is determined to address whatever escape from reality football may provide. Okay. Thank you very much.
Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Rotus. Yeah.